the person who was heading was Mrs. Lalita Malia. That's Vijay Malia's mother. Oh, that's a tough one.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced during the restoration?
I joined the army of conscience keepers.
Today's guest is someone who has dedicated his life not just to preserving buildings, but to protecting the soul of the city. Mr. GM Kapoor, or GM as he's fondly known, is the state convener of INTAC West Bengal and a long-time guardian of Kolkata's heritage. A graduate of IIT BHU and IIM Calcutta, he brings a rare mix of technical precision and cultural empathy to the field of conservation. Under his leadership, landmark laws have been passed, iconic structures saved, and stories once lost to time revived for generations to come. He has published over 100 articles and curated heritage documentation projects across Bengal and Assam. But more than titles and accolades, GM is known for his unwavering belief that heritage is not a luxury, but a responsibility. It is an honor to host him today on Host Diaries to explore the stories etched into our walls. Let's begin by speaking about your journey with INTAC. You joined INTAC in 1984 after seeing a lot of threats to Calcutta's heritage properties, bungalows. What was the moment that you felt like I have to do something?
So let's go back to 1984, 83, I would say. End of 83, there were full-page advertisements in most national newspapers which invited people to join an army of conscience keepers to the nation to protect what is rightfully theirs. So that's a very attractive invitation, and that was the invitation to join INTAC. INTAC was the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, which had been set up under the chairmanship of Rajiv Gandhi. The whole idea was that you must protect what is rightfully yours, which is your heritage. And heritage is something which is a legacy given to you by your forefathers to hand over to your coming generations. That was a very, I would say, exciting invitation. And I felt, especially living in Calcutta in the 80s, early 80s, when the city was really going to the dogs, if I might use that word. There was very little of interest in protecting heritage. And especially for me, I live in an area in Hastings actually, which is along the river. And there are a number of monuments which are there along the river which were in a real decrepit state. Passing that way every day, I used to see things just crumbling. So when I saw this ad, I said this is a great platform to join and help to protect these monuments. So that was my, you can say, initiation into INTAC. As we moved on, there is a monument on the river called Gwalior Monument, which is, of course, British built. Calcutta is a British built city, so every second monument has to be British built. But our idea was not to eulogize the British colonial history of Bengal or anything. Our idea was, this is a landmark of the city. It adds beauty and grandeur to the city. Why not revive it from that angle?
Understood.
So it was not in any way to do with colonial revival. We took that up as our first project. If you go by, I don't know whether you've seen it or not, most people are not familiar with Calcutta actually. Most Calcuttans are not familiar with Calcutta. That's the unfortunate truth. But this is, next time you go by that, the riverside, you will see this is a marble base with a metal cupola. The metal was from the molten metal of the guns which were captured by the British. Those had been sort of vandalized. So we sought government permission to restore that. That was our first restoration project in Calcutta. The idea was to create awareness amongst the people at large that your heritage is your own. You must protect it. So that was one. The second was the Princeps Memorial, which is also now very visible, and now it has been kept very well. So that was actually behind the partition which was created for the construction of the new Hooghly bridge. So it was not even visible. Anyway, once it was opened up, it was in a terrible state. So that was the second project we took up.
Okay.
And the whole idea of taking up these projects was to instill a sense of pride for the residents of the town. You asked me why I got into INTAC and what did I
And what
do.
did you join as?
I joined as an ordinary member. I joined the army of conscience keepers. So I was a soldier.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. And from there to being currently, what are you?
I was on the governing council of INTAC and I was chairing the chapters committee of INTAC. Currently, I am the state convener of INTAC. We are not a particularly hierarchical organization. We are all members. We all work together. Anybody who has a project can come up with that project and we all work together to implement it.
That's lovely. And how many members were you at that time?
Oh, that time we were about 40 members only.
And currently?
Currently 200 and odd in Calcutta.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Coming from a mechanical engineering and IIM background, how did you transition into something so unique, such as heritage conservation, a field requiring, I must say, skills of a completely different order?
Skills of a completely different order is right. I'm not an architect, I'm not a conservation engineer, so to say. The idea is to understand what is the requirement of a particular project, both technical as well as financial. So to that extent, I think I had the necessary skills. In all these projects, we got hold of, say, conservation architects from IIT Kharagpur or from SPA Delhi. So these people provided the inputs. We did the project management.
Understood.
So that's where our skills came in. In fact, at that time, the person who was heading was Mrs. Lalita Malia. That's Vijay Malia's mother.
Okay.
She was very active and in fact, she got us all together. Then, of course, she relocated to London. So once she relocated, then she handed over the baton to me. So that was the interest was that do something for the city. At least I was born and brought up here, not born, but brought up here, and I have seen this city in its glory. When it started the downward spiral, I thought at least something should be done to stop that.
What was one of your key wins in INTAC in its initial year? Something that made you feel...
Yeah, these two projects which I said, the third one which is also along the river, which again I don't think you would have seen, is the Lashkar monument. That is a monument which is after Prinsep Ghat on the other side. It's not very easily approachable, but it's also a magnificent monument. It is in memory of the Indian merchant seamen who died in the First World War. That's one of the rare monuments which were set up by the British in memory of Indian merchant seamen.
So the British set it up?
Yeah. 1920, I think it was.
You helped amend a lot of laws, the KMC Act.
Yeah.
What was the process like and what are the key moments that stick with you?
Okay, so that was again to save the built heritage. This activity, like conservation, restoration, can save one building at a time. But a law can save across the board all the buildings which can be protected. Since we in INTAC have a national presence, I had a colleague in Mumbai who had worked on the heritage laws for Mumbai. Once that had been established in Mumbai, we decided that we must do the same thing in Kolkata. At that time, it was again right timing. The stars were helping us. We had a commissioner, his name was Mr. Ashim Burman, who was very, very much interested in taking this heritage movement forward. And for some reason, the government was supportive. So once you have that, then you can move ahead. So we had the Mumbai Act available to us as a template, which we brought to Calcutta. We had a number of sittings, toing and froing, and ultimately it was enacted. It was included in the Kolkata Municipal Corporation Act. After that, the West Bengal government set up a committee under Professor Barun Dey. Incidentally, Professor Barun Dey was my professor in IIM Calcutta.
Oh, wow.
So that turned out to be a good fortune also. So he, of course, was a professor of history. In IIM, we also had a course, industrial and economic history of India. That's what he had taught us. So we had very good relations. That committee was set up to enact the legislation and listing of heritage protection in West Bengal. With that, the A suggestion was also given to set up the West Bengal Heritage Commission, which was ultimately set up. And then Professor Barunde became the chairman of that commission also later. We again helped in providing a list of heritage buildings which we had ourselves prepared, hoping that they would come under protection. So that, in a way, was our contribution in the early days to heritage conservation. And what was very important, see, heritage in those days was considered very elitist concept. I remember we had a mayor called Mr. Subrata Mukherjee, who, when confronted with heritage damage, so he almost blew his top. He said, "What is all this heritage, which was quoted in the papers," and then he had to withdraw his words. So heritage was not a common activity. Heritage
Not a
protection.
priority.
Not a priority at all. Even today, priority is less, but more people are talking about it. There's a buzz.
Yeah.
In heritage, there's so many organizations which have come up for heritage conservation. At that time, we were the only one. In fact, that is something which we are very proud of, that we've been able to take the movement forward. I mean, everything, it's not that one organization can do everything. You require a lot of people to participate and take this as a movement.
Is there still a lot to do, or do you think we have achieved a decent sum when it comes to protecting the soul of the city? Where are we in the battle?
Oh, we have a lot to do. Actually, we are unfortunately fighting against developers actually, because they want to use every square inch available to construct. Now, of course, I don't blame them. They're doing it all legally, so there's nothing wrong about that. And unfortunately, the circumstances are such that people, as their families have grown, the buildings have also fallen into disrepair. They are unable to maintain their properties. Another thing which we have been trying to fight for is some kind of incentives for heritage building owners. If a building is declared heritage and you have taken away the right to the owner to develop his property without giving him anything in return, it's not fair. We have been trying to fight for this. It's still under consideration, a lot of toing and froing going on. These things take a lot of time, and I mean, definitely all over the country, but definitely in Calcutta. So there's a lot to be done. And it's not that every old building is gold. A building must have some, I mean, we've got all the criteria laid out. I mean, it must have some reason for it to be declared heritage. We feel that a lot of buildings in Calcutta can add value to this city, and that heritage of this city can unleash that economic value of Calcutta. A lot of people, like you go to Prague, say, or you go to Budapest or something, their heritage is something which is everybody goes and admires.
The whole tourism industry is based on the heritage.
Yeah. So that is something which, unless people take pride in their city, unless they want to have people come and admire their city, we want that to happen actually.
Understood. So you meander towards my next question. What criteria, if you can just give me the basic couple of points that you use to declare if a building is a heritage property in need of urgent conservation, what would fit the bill?
Well, I mean, one is, of course, the architectural beauty of that building, the historic aspect of that building. Did it have any social connotation? Whether the Congress party used to meet there regularly. That's a social connotation. With aesthetic appeal, historic, as I said, whether any important personalities lived there.
Is there like a minimum age criteria?
There is no specific age criteria, but normally it would be, say, in the region of 100 plus. But it's not a mandatory criteria. I mean, we have declared Ramakrishna Mission here as a heritage that was declared, which was constructed in the 50s, I think 54 or 55. So that is not necessarily criteria. Age is certainly important, not necessarily a criteria. So these are the 4 or 5 aspects which we look at.
Based on our research, we've seen that INTAC runs educational programs in schools as well as other communities.
Yes.
How successful has that initiative been for INTAC?
Very successful. I mean, that is one of our most prized programs, if you can say. We have what is called the Heritage Education and Communication Service, which runs these programs. About 15 years back, when smartphones were not smart that time, as smart as they are today, we had given video cameras to school children who were part of our Young Heritage program. We held workshops to train them to be able to make films on their perception of heritage Children have a different view of heritage than what we have. Just to inculcate the spirit of heritage conservation in them, they made excellent films. We used to have a film festival here. There was a selection process where the best films were then exhibited. And of course, we have these quiz competitions. We have for children, I'm talking about quiz competition with children, essay competitions, we have painting competitions, we have trips to heritage sites.
What schools do you work with?
We have worked with most of the well-known schools in Calcutta. We have worked with. In addition, we have also introduced schools like the Oriental Seminary from North Calcutta, and we've got Bengali language schools. We've got our books on training, teachers training in Bengali also. We have tried to take it across the board.
Is INTAC only to do with buildings or beyond just the brick and mortar?
No, INTAC is got a very vast canvas. INTAC
like crafts, festivals.
Crafts, festivals. We have natural heritage. In fact, we're working on a project in mangrove protection in the Sundarbans. We have done a major project in botanical gardens.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, botanical gardens where we have cleaned up the water bodies. There are 28 water bodies in botanical gardens.
That many?
Yes, that many. You see, again, botanical gardens used to be quite a regular haunt. As kids, we used to go there for picnics at one time. And now, I think, lost its luster. I don't know for what reason, but it's a beautiful place. Now, we hope we will be doing other things there also, putting up an interpretation. So, natural heritage is one of our major activities. Then we have in Calcutta itself art conservation center. We do restoration of paintings, books, manuscripts, and other artifacts. So we have a full-fledged art conservation center here.
How do you restore books and manuscripts?
You must come and see it, how we do it. No, seriously, it's worth visiting. We are doing a major job for the Port Trust, Kolkata Port Trust, who have maps going back 150 years, which were in not so good shape, which we have restored and returned. We are working with them continuously. We did a lot of work for the Eastern Command. The Eastern Command Library, they have a large collection of rare books which were restored by us.
Let's say, as of today, according to you, what would be the biggest challenge of INTAC? Would it be urban pressure, funding, law enforcement? What would be a big pressure?
All these. All these. Unless the community gets involved, nothing can happen. You can restore something, if the community is not interested, it'll go back to its former glory. So funds is always a problem. Funds in anything is a problem, but then you have to work around it, try and get funds from somewhere or the other. And there are currently a lot of CSR funding available. And since CSR funding has been permitted for heritage conservation, this is also funding. Law enforcement in the sense, even if a building is declared heritage, many times it is pulled down because the law looks the other way. Or maybe the law has got other priorities, they may not even know about it. So all those factors, as I said, everything is important.
Is there a lot of fight back from the developers of the city as well?
We don't confront anybody. We are not anti-development. We don't confront anybody. We don't want to fight with anybody. We want to take everybody along. So we try to take their views also. Their objectives are different, may not see eye to eye with us.
How do you marry that? How do you marry short-term profit with long-term gains?
We can't do that. We can only try and convince them that, yaar, isko to chhod do. Like that.
How can boutique homestays and heritage hotels support conservation while promoting their spaces in a thoughtful manner? You've obviously worked with many such properties, one of which we're going to be discussing on this show. What would your advice be to boutique property owners and hotels and how they can celebrate both?
See, here again, it's nothing new. It's not I'm going to reinvent the wheel or something. I've given the example to our tourism department. In Kerala, they have a scheme called Grihasthali, where they are promoting homestays by a certain set of rules. And if you follow those rules and you agree to make your home a homestay, government will give you some funding also. Now, basically, if that kind of situation is brought into West Bengal also, number one, today there is no heritage homestay directory available. You talked about Iftikhar, he's done a major job. I think something fantastic. Like that, people have houses all over the city. A lot of them are lying unused mainly because the children have gone overseas, or they don't live in Calcutta, the parents are finding it difficult to maintain their houses. So if some financial assistance is given to them, hotel chains can help in advice. Bathrooms should be kept like this is the fittings you need. I think this would be a great idea.
Expertise and funding. Those are the two places where most owners of heritage properties are not willing to take the leap of faith.
Correct.
So those are the two things that are lacking.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
do believe that there are a few hotel companies that are now starting to look towards restoration and building heritage hotels rather than building your Bauhaus structures.
They are not. If there is a building which it fits their bill, I mean, obviously it must have the number of rooms which will sustain. There are many hotel groups which are interested in. As you said, we'll discuss that later.
No, but definitely, apart from themselves being interested, they can offer consultancy. खुद तो आना और कराना एक बात होती है.
Advisory बोल दीजिए. Consultancy has a lot of other connotations. Advisory बोल दीजिए. Advice तो दे सकते हैं ना, जाके कि इतने तौलिए रखने हैं, ऐसे सफाई रखनी है, ये करना है, वो करना, which is part of their CSR. I mean, not money wise, but even otherwise.
Yeah, it's quality CSR.
Yeah, I'm sure they can help. They can come in as and provide that soft skill training.
100%. 100%. I think that's such a beautiful idea. What should every guest visiting a heritage site or a hotel do in order to learn, respect, and contribute in their own small way?
Oh, that's a tough one. If somebody is visiting a heritage site, I'm sure he's aware of its importance, so that respect and other things should come on their own. Nobody should come and teach somebody to respect a heritage site. Obviously, we are indisciplined people, we are unhygienic people. You go to even ASI sites and you find litter strewn around, plastic thrown all over. So even if these minor things they take care of, it will help a lot. You must have seen Prinsep Ghat. Now, at one time, you could go inside and sit in that colonnaded monument itself.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now you can't, because they put a railing around it.
Yeah.
Why have they put that railing? Because people were not respecting that monument. People were going in and writing graffiti on the walls. This is something which very, very difficult for anyone to inculcate into the public mind. So this is the only way. Ultimately, you put a barricade so that nobody can go in. Now everybody loses out in the process.
Education is where we lack. Literacy.
Totally. I mean, this was one of the points which were made out right in the beginning when INTAC was this graffiti on the walls is something which should be avoided.
And spitting.
Spitting, though, is our national pastime, I think. I mean, it's very sad, but...
That's so true, though. Now let's take the conversation to the Denmark Tavern in Serampur. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the tavern?
No, before that, I'll tell you something about how this came into the forefront. 25 years back, we made a film called Europe on the Ganges. Before that, we had made a study of the Euro-Indian urbanism on the banks of the Ganges. This was an academic study, which sort of documented the various European settlements along the Hooghly. So Serampur, the Danes, Chandannagar, the French, Chinsura was the Dutch, Bandel was the Portuguese. These were all on the west bank, and you had on the east bank the British. Of course, you had also, which is not so well known because they didn't last a long time, the Prussians as well as the Flemish, but they're insignificant. But these were the main ones. So we, in fact, had thought of river heritage tourism corridor with these people, all these sites. Anyway, see, our job is to sow the seed. Okay.
I was going to say the same thing.
So that's what we did. I think over a period of time, all these have become now destinations. So let's go back to Serampur. Serampur was the Danish settlement from 1755 to 1845, that period. It didn't last very long, but it was something which still had Danish architecture, Danish buildings. The National Museum of Denmark approached us to collect information on this because they wanted to restore the Danish heritage of Serampur. Now, the Danish heritage of Serampur, one thing which they insist even today to say that it was not a Danish colony. It was a Danish trading center. That's a difference there because they did not want to appear as colonizers like the British. So that distinction they wanted to draw. So anyway, National Museum Denmark representatives had come to Calcutta. We had a lot of interaction with them, and these people are so thorough that their research is impeccable. They went around everywhere, collected as much information as possible, and then they came up with the project where we were their partners, implementation partners for restoration of the Danish heritage of Sirampur. So in the process, we came across this ruin actually. You've seen old.
So that was my first question as to what was the state of the tavern
It was
initially.
a ruin. I wish I could show you pictures, maybe some other time. We just discovered it by chance that this was also a Danish building and it was a tavern. Half of it was occupied by the police. And the front was also probably occupied by the police at some time, but then it's so dilapidated that they gave it up. In their project team, there was an architect also from Denmark, Mr. Fleming. And he, along with our architect here, was Manish Chakravarti. They got together. We decided that this should be restored. So we had gone there and we did the survey. And I think it's a remarkable restoration. The main point is that restoration is generating revenue. Other buildings were also restored. One was the governor's house, one was the St. Olaf's church, one was the two gates were restored, then there was a land registry office that was also restored. There is another project which we did. We had a competition where we invited people, architects, to give their proposals for a town square. That is just in front of the church and behind the tavern. So that town square project somehow has not come up because that was not funded by, all these were funded by the National Museum of Denmark. This particular project was supposed to be funded by the government of West Bengal, the municipal corporation, but that has not happened so far. After restoration, it was handed over to the tourism department, government of West Bengal, who then invited private players, of which Park Hotel was ultimately selected for.
So Park Hotel manages the property?
They manage the property. They have got 5 rooms there and they have got a dining room. And they've also got a Fleury's counter there.
Oh, very nice.
So it's doing very well and it's one of our major success stories of a restoration project which has achieved economic activity for the area.
Architecturally speaking, how is this particular building different from other colonial era British buildings?
This building is a very simple building. It's nothing ornate. In Calcutta, you find a lot of British era buildings which are either Gothic or they are Edwardian or they are Victorian with a lot of ornamentation. This is a very simple building, straight cut. That is again probably because of the Nordic style, which is very, very simplistic, minimalistic, jisko bolte hain. So it is more like that. It does not have a very ornate architectural style, but it's very functional and very attractive building. The color scheme was, we retained what was there in those days because from the old paintings and all that we got to know. So we used the same buff and white.
What were the biggest challenges that you faced during the restoration?
As I said, it was in ruins. So one had to compromise somewhat in the sense that in authentic restoration, one tries to use the authentic materials of construction. Here, we had to compromise to use steel because the wood which was used in the original buildings had rotted. So to give it another 100 years lease of life, this was the only alternative. So to that extent, this was a challenge and the architects' desire to make the building strong.
Was there any moment you thought that you would just give it up?
No, not really, not really. In fact, if you go there, you will see one spiral staircase, which we have left as it is because we felt there's no point in reconstructing that. So it's there, you will see it as a ruin over there. You will see photographs through the net or something.
Give us some learnings of how the Danish influence in Bengal existed. Like two different worlds, right? Like there's Bengali culture and then there's Danish culture. So how did those two mix together to build something like the Denmark Tavern?
The Denmark Tavern was not necessarily built by the Danes. It was built by a Britisher. It was like a weekend retreat for British people from Calcutta to come and relax over here. But the guy who built it was, I think Jack Parr was his name, 1782 or something. It was basically a getaway from Calcutta for the Brits.
Then why is it called Danish Tavern?
Because it was Denmark, the territory was Denmark.
Understood.
So it was called Denmark Tavern. It was a place where you could come and relax. Tavern means you could have your liquor. So that was all well organized. When they say that they didn't colonize, they came here for trading. So it was a trading settlement. The other thing is the Sirampur College, which was set up here in Sirampur, was one of the premier educational institutions which had a charter from the Danish king. It was run by, again, Britishers. The Brits didn't allow any missionary activity from their territory. So here we had William Carey, Marshman, and Ward, who were missionaries. The other history of Sirampur is that the first printing of the Bible was in Bengali, was from Sirampur.
Oh, wow.
So that printing press is still there, apparently. There was an exhibition here recently where they had displayed all these things. William Carey is the person who set up the horticultural gardens in Calcutta, incident. William Carey, Marshman, and Ward, they were the three people they were Britishers who were running the Sirampur College. When you visit Sirampur, you will see this is one of the most magnificent buildings in Sirampur. That is built in a very Greek, Temple of Minerva style facade with huge columns and a pediment on top. So Danes were not particularly interested in capturing that territory or anything.
Did the local community of Sirampur play a role when you went through the restoration of this?
Yeah, very much. See, that's again, I must commend the Danes who were seconded here from the National Museum of Denmark. They have this very, very clear concept of involving the community in any activity they do.
So they weren't skeptical in any form or manner?
No, they had they had involved them right from day one. The locals started taking this as their own project.
As of now, do you employ mainly the people in Sirampur?
By and large.
So you mentioned that there were 5 rooms, right?
5 rooms, yeah.
And all the rooms are the same, or is there any differentiation between the rooms?
One may be larger than the other or something.
But they're not in your traditional style of room, suite, bigger suite?
No, they're not that way. See, the rooms would probably facing the river, so those would be probably more prime locations. But those rooms are on the first floor, all of them, except for maybe the ones which face the river. They would be probably in demand more than the others. I mean, people go there for the weekend.
How far is it from Calcutta?
Now, 45 minutes.
And you can drive down straight?
Yeah, you can drive down.
Is there a way that the property has curated an experience beyond the stay as well? How can somebody feel that they have come to some place that is not just a room, a bed, and a bathroom? What is it that the property does that makes you feel that they have more than just the basic?
In the property, there's really not much. Property is just this, rooms on the first floor. The ground floor has the dining area and maybe a sit out. So the building doesn't give you anything more than that. Sirampur, I told you the Danish part of it we can talk about, the few buildings. The Sirampur College. These are the experiences you can get out of that. Beyond that, nothing much.
What kind of traveler do you visualize as being the right kind of audience for a property like this? What would their characteristics be? What would their traits be?
This would be for people who are visiting Calcutta or people who live in Calcutta, want a weekend out. People who are coming from outside, instead of staying in Calcutta, they'll go and stay there. I know people who came from Delhi for whom I had made bookings in that place. They went to Murshidabad and then they said that rather than stay in Calcutta, they would like to stay in.
And how many days do you think is the...
No, I think 2 days is more than enough. From there, you can go to Chandannagar also.
And what is Chandannagar?
Chandannagar is the French settlement.
Okay.
You can go to Chinsura, which was the Dutch settlement. There's some interesting buildings in Chinsura as well as in Chandannagar. So you can make that your center and go to these places. Of course, nothing much is left in Bandel now, except of the Bandel church. But otherwise, in fact, just opposite Sirampur is Barakpur.
Yes.
So you can also go to Barakpur by boat.
Okay.
Go to the Gandhi Ghat, go to the other.
So there's so much that you can do from there.
You can, yeah.
How has the Denmark Tavern been received by the public post its reopening? Do you see an increase in business in Sirampur? Do you see a lot of travelers coming? Is the hotel acting as a source source of income for the community. In terms of sustainable tourism and heritage walks that are there, how is it contributing? Is there interest by the people in and around, or do you find more people going there from outside of Bengal?
No, even people from Calcutta are going there. You haven't seen it yet. I think you should go.
Definitely.
No, like that. I mean, I'm just saying there's so many people in Calcutta. A lot of people in South Calcutta have not seen North Calcutta.
True.
Yeah, so this place, I think by word of mouth, it's being promoted. And people are going to Sirampur, and they maybe, as I said, they're including Chandanagar as part of the trip. And people who want to stay the night there, then they have to do their bookings in advance. But I think it is certainly adding to the value of Srirampur. I don't know whether local industry, I don't know whether there's any handicraft industry. Srirampur, incidentally, was very well known for block printing of textiles. Whether that can be revived, I don't know. I mean, I wish it would.
So, a couple more questions.
Sure.
This is going to be a little bit difficult, tricky, but a fun question that I'm going to ask you. If the walls of the Denmark Tavern could speak today, what do you think they would say to you?
I think they would say thank you for restoring us and keeping us going, hopefully for another 100 years.
And when you say restoring, how much of it is new and how much of it is old?
Well, if you ask me very frankly, except for the outer walls,
the facade of the building.
Yeah. The rest is all new because, as I said, it was in very poor condition.
Have you preserved the heritage through the photographs?
Yes, all that is available. That is there for all to see.
Final two questions. What advice would you give to new owners or heritage or property, boutique property owners on how to maintain their property while balancing the services that you can give to the guests as well?
This question would be ideally answered by people who are running heritage properties which have provided value to the city. One of them is the Rajbari Bawali. I don't know whether you've been there.
That's one of the most beautiful properties in Canada.
And that was also in ruins, mind you. That gentleman actually, it was a labor of love for him. You know how he went about doing it. And today it's doing great business.
It's thriving.
Thriving. Right. It's not an easy job. It requires deep pockets. Of course, the smaller ones, the ones in town, say, people who have heritage homes, they want to make them into heritage homes. For them, it's a much easier job. There has to be a concerted effort to promote them also. Even, simple things in North Calcutta, you have all these students who require, PG accommodation. Even that can be provided. Of course, it is being provided, but homestays is the best way of preserving these heritage homes.
So you can think that they can even be preserved beyond hotels, because hotels is like popular option for most of these hotels, heritage properties to make money. But a PG is something that not many people think of.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's something that is long term. It also brings a different kind of clientele.
Right.
But that's a very innovative thought that you've come up with.
Yeah. You see, PG may advantage to the owner is not a long-term commitment in a way. They are students, spend time over there. See, homestay mein kya hai ki person comes one night, goes away. Here, some kind of relationship is also built up as a PG.
With the building.
With the building, with the owners.
With the owners. Is there any final thoughts or advice that you would like to leave with our viewers who's going to be seeing the show today? What would you say would be a key takeaway from our discussion today?
I am dedicated to conservation. So I would request all our listeners and viewers, treat heritage with respect and not as an elitist object. Try and see which way you can help to conserve that heritage.
India has a lot of it.
India has that. It's a problem of plenty, na?
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem. How we can involve the community at large to take pride in their heritage, even at the grassroots level. It's not only that we are sitting in the city, and we have a rural heritage development program also. So it's not only for city dwellers. There's so much heritage. Every corner has, every stone has heritage in it. Number of terracotta temples in Bengal. Unless somebody looks after them, of course, at the end of the day, it's money. But at the same time, if the people are interested, they can as a community get together and do something. We are trying to do a project which involves the community. You see, the community gets together for Durga Puja.
Yeah, they do.
And they create such marvels. It's become
it's marvelous.
Yes, so why can't the community get together to protect their pada and make it into a marvel also? So that's something which we would like to mention to all our viewers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor, on coming on the show. It was a great, great conversation today. Thank you. If this episode inspires you, hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us your favorite heritage hotel experience. Let's keep the stories alive, one host at a time.